define a state's identity. While Minnesota is known more as a sports state over South Dakota has its own proud athletic traditions. Although South Dakota and Minnesota differ in population and professional team presence, both states boast rich sports cultures, unique rivalries, and notable collegiate achievements that reflect community pride. Minnesota has major college programs and professional teams that draw attention regionally and nationally. For college, they have the Gophers, obviously, and hockey's huge in the state, so the University of Minnesota Duluth is huge there too. And most recently, the St. Thomas, which is in St. Paul. As well as their professional teams being the Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota Twins, Wild, Loons, and Timberwolves. Hockey especially holds strong culture and significance in Minnesota. If you look every year, they do the state national or the state hockey tournament, and that gets national views all the time. Just you always see it on TikTok and social media. South Dakota obviously doesn't have any major professional sports teams, but college sports, especially football and basketball, are hugely popular statewide. The SDSU Jackrabbits in football has become a powerhouse with a long streak of playoff appearances and multiple national championships. As well as University of South Dakota being in the same division, this has created one of the biggest state rivalries in collegiate sports. Speaking of that rivalry, that is the Dakota, or no, that one is an in-state one, but there's another rivalry for SDSU against NDSU. That's the Dakota Marker rivalry. This one's huge in college football because they are both powerhouses in the FCS level of Division I football. They both always make a run at it in the national playoffs, and they're very, very good teams. There's also some Minnesota versus South Dakota matchups. Minnesota has the edge historically, obviously, as they are a Big Ten school, and at the FBS level, which is a higher level Division I college football. And Minnesota is leading, of course, against SDSU. Their last 7 matchups, they're 7-0, and against USD in the last 11 matchups, they're 9-2. In sports like baseball and wrestling, the Jackrabbits have recently secured notable victories over the University of Minnesota. The win in wrestling was on November 25th of 2025, and the one in baseball, although not very recent, was on April 26th in 2022. Minnesota obviously has their own rivalries. They're in the Big Ten Conference, which is one of the strongest conferences in collegiate sports, with their most notable rival being the Wisconsin Badgers. In Minnesota, professional and collegiate teams attract media coverage and support across the Midwest. So not only are the fans coming from Minnesota, their professional teams are regional. So they get a lot of support from here in South Dakota, North Dakota, the border where Wisconsin meets Minnesota, Iowa. And obviously their hockey and football presence is very strong, with the Minnesota Vikings having one of the most loyal fan bases. And obviously the Minnesota Wild, being in Minnesota, they're part of the state of hockey. So they have a lot of fans pulled in through that. Teams like the Twins also have strong regional presence, including strong support again from both Dakotas and Iowa, as well as Minnesota, obviously. South Dakota fans rally strongly behind collegiate programs, especially when teams like SDSU make a nationwide noise. They also have a really, really strong pull when it comes to communities, and most of the time those game days create large social events in small towns. Most of the time that's where they all meet up when it comes to high school and small collegiate sports. You can kind of see that here when you go to a basketball game here in Mitchell at the Corn Palace. They always fill out the stands and everything. Right, as well as the student section, is pretty loud, that's pretty fun. High school sports are huge here compared to Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota high school sports matter, with hockey and everything, but, in like a small town community way, the sports matter more here. South Dakota and Minnesota may differ in scale and number of professional teams, but both boast passionate sports cultures. Minnesota with its deep traditions in hockey and major collegiate programs, and South Dakota and its rising college football stars and regional rivalries.